Welcome to Step Zero. Modern work is a lot. Let's take it one conversation at a time. My guest today is Alexandra Crosswell, a stress scientist and leadership advisor who, after more than 15 years leading research on stress and resilience, now helps leaders navigate high demand, high stakes work environments. In this episode, we talk about what constant demand is doing to us biologically, why AI feels like a different kind of threat, and what we can actually do about it. Let's get into it. Alexandra, thank you so much for making the time today and welcome to the Step Zero podcast.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Alexandra, in this podcast, as you know, we explore the complexities of modern work. And a fundamental piece of it, I believe, is that professionals at all levels these days seem to deal with constant exhaustion. And with that, they need to perform in this ever complex and changing environment, which is the modern workplace. And given your expertise as a stress scientist and leadership advisor, obviously, I'd love to pick your brain for the next, say, about 15 minutes. And I'd like to kick this off with looking a bit closely at stress. Now, I know that the word stress is being used by most people, including me, to describe a lot of different things. I also understand that measuring stress is not the easiest thing. Maybe it's getting somewhat easier these days with the new technological advancements. So forgive me if I start with a broad ask, but if I wanted to get a better understanding of stress and specifically how that affects the modern workplace, what could you tell me about it? Where would you start?
Yeah, such a good place to start, really, around like what is even the definition of stress and how do we measure it? There's many ways to define it. And if you ask different experts in the field, they might give you different definitions. But one of the things that we all agree on is that a general way to understand stress is looking at it as the demands of the environment or of the situation you're in outweigh the resources that you have available to match those demands. So a basic example in the workplace is like when you just have a huge to-do list, right? All the demands, like this meeting and this thing you have to do and this interview and this email you have to send, all the different demands that are piling up on your to-do list. And then the resources that you have to meet those are things like time, energy, help from other people, money, and knowledge. And so if you have all the time in the world, then you have plenty of the resource of time, so you could get everything done on your to-do list, all the demands. If you have a lot of money, you could hire other people to help you or more technology to help you meet those demands. But of course, in modern life, we're very short on time, on energy, on all the resources that I listed. And so what ends up happening is that the demands placed on us are much greater than the resources. And that is when we feel the physical and psychological sensation of feeling stressed or overwhelmed because there's just too many demands and not enough resources.
That is super clear. Thank you so much. And what is this constant demand actually doing to us over time? Is there anything from a biological standpoint, I believe, that you could tell me in a way that I understand?
Yeah, so we can really understand stress both as a biological response and also a psychological response. So if you think about kind of how you feel just emotionally when you have so many demands, it can feel overwhelming and it can feel frustrating and all these different emotions that come up. And part of that is because of what's actually happening in our body. So what happens in the body when we're under stress is that our systems, our nervous systems, our cardiovascular system, our hormonal systems are all activated in order to meet the demands of the situation. And that really comes from an evolutionary, very kind of like logical, biological process where in order to just get anything done, your body has to mount a response. In particular, when you're responding to something challenging, like something stressful, your body activates what's called the acute stress response. And that is a system of processes that's really left over from biological history in which we had to respond to challenges with a fight or flight response. So some of your listeners have probably heard this phrase before, fight or flight. And what that means is that your body is detecting a threat, either consciously or subconsciously. You perceive that there's something threatening to you as a human being. And so your systems have developed this very healthy, natural response to activate. And it activates by pumping your heart faster So let's just pretend like you imagine watching a scary movie and your heart rate starts to go up. It's because your system is detecting a threat. Even though it's not real, your system doesn't know that. And so your heart rate goes up, and your heart rate goes up because it wants to pump more blood to get oxygen and nutrients either to your brain so you can think faster and clearer, or out to your muscles so you can run faster or fight any threat that's coming your way. And of course, in modern life, we're not like fighting or fleeing. We're not running away or fighting a predator when we feel stress, but our bodies don't know that. They still are acting like there's an active threat when really what our system is picking up on is just a really long to-do list or a really aggressive email from a client or from your boss or a coworker or a disagreement in a relationship. Your body and mind subconsciously perceive those as threats to you. And so your system gets activated. And the main problem and like the main thesis to take away for your listeners is that spending too much time in that activated state where your heart rate's up and your breathing is shortened is very cellularly exhausting because it takes so much energy for your body to get into that state and maintain it that you're slowly burning out all of your energy resources over time.
And this is pretty much the baseline for most people these days, right? We're not in a excessive threatening situation. It's not a full crisis, but at the same time, we're not at ease either. And I believe I heard you speak, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, about this moderate threat arousal. So this situation, this position where we are in constant alert. Is this something that has evolved or has happened over just the past few years because of the way we live and the way we work and the way we're constantly switched on?
Yeah, I mean, that's our hypothesis. So when I was a scientist working at University of California, San Francisco, I worked with a team of researchers, Alyssa Epple, Wendy Berry Mendez, Eric Prather, and then others over at Columbia like Martin Picard. And over time, we started to come up with this hypothesis together that, wow, we're no longer just experiencing stress and then recovering from it. What we're actually doing in modern life is we're detecting stress and we're just staying activated. And this is a newer concept. And there's a theory called the generalized unsafety theory of stress, the GUTS model, that really initially established this idea. And my colleagues and I have extended it and the thinking around this to extend it to cellular health and cellular functioning. But really, the main idea is what you said, which is we're in modern life, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much novelty, there's so much time pressure. Those are the core elements of the stress response. And that we're all operating in that moderate arousal state for so much of the day. And that is what is leading to our feeling physically and emotionally of exhaustion and depletion.
Which unfortunately makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can relate to that, as I'm sure lots of people can relate to it. And look, it would be impossible not to somehow include AI in the picture. Everyone is talking about AI. Everyone knows that for good or bad, AI is likely to stay. We don't know exactly where this is going. So a lot of experts call it this messy middle where we haven't figured things out and we're all trying to play catch up in a way. What do you think this is leading to in the context of stress or uncertainty, where people go, am I even going to be relevant in a year from now? Am I going to keep my job in the future? Or, things like, I am doing whatever I can to keep up with this new technological advancements, but I feel like the goalpost keeps moving. This is clearly one of the new, maybe strongest stressors out there in the workplace. What's your opinion? What do you see happening, and if anything, where do you see this is going?
Yes, it's the question of the moment for sure. I think what I see is the introduction of a new threat, of a new stressor that we haven't experienced before as a workplace. And that is an existential threat around, will I even have a role? One of the biggest drivers of human beingness is a sense of belonging. And for all of us, AI has introduced a question of, where do I belong? Where will I fit? There's so much uncertainty around the role that we as individuals are going to play. that, especially with the headlines saying, 50% of jobs will be, eliminated because of AI. And that really creates this kind of double threat, like one of where do I belong and where do I fit? And two, will I even be able to support my family or provide for myself, if I'm out of a job? What does that mean? And so that level of stress and threat is something we haven't experienced before as a collective from the technology side, especially. It reminds me of other situations historically where we've seen just massive change, whether that's political or economic or technological. And what's interesting about the era in which we're living is we're actually seeing all three of those changes happen at once: politically, economically, technologically. And so if you as an individual are feeling overwhelmed, confused, like you don't quite know what to do, like that is that should be a reaction. That's a normal human reaction to the uncertainty of what we're facing right now.
Now, I know that there is not always a satisfactory answer for everyone, but the obvious question that I have the privilege of asking you, but I'm sure a lot of people would want to ask you, is what do we do about this, right? So we've spoken about this status of more or less constant stress, constant arousal, constant alertness. What would you tell people? Well, in this case, mostly, I guess the listeners here would be knowledge workers, white collars. What would you tell them? What could someone do that is at their disposal, that doesn't require a massive implementation of resources they could implement tomorrow, next week, or anytime they feel things are getting too much?
Okay, so I have two different pieces of advice to give. The first is in response to what do we do when we are worried that we're depleting our energy. Either you're ending each day really exhausted and depleted, so that should be a signal, or you can feel it during the day. You can feel yourself getting worked up. Maybe you're jumping between tasks, you don't know where to focus your attention, or you're feeling that sensation of anxiety in your chest. In either of these cases, one of the biggest insights is to realize that that is your body doing what it's built to do, which is respond to threats. And the trick, the hack of how do we get out of that and conserve our energy is to create moments of safety. How can I make my body in this moment right now feel safe? That can be through breathing. It can be through holding a warm cup of coffee or tea. It can be through relationship. It can be through being in nature. It can be through prayer. Whatever works for you as an individual, going for a walk, talking with a loved one, journaling makes your body feel that sensation of right here in this moment, I am safe. What that does, it's not sort of not a psychological necessity, it's a biological necessity. Because what you're doing is you're turning down the activation of your systems. And that will help conserve energy. One of the most energy depleting things you can do for your body is stay in that moderate threat state for too long. Because it's like your body's a battery, in our mitochondria and our cells, we only have a certain amount of energy. So you're depleting that battery life down to nothing. And so what you have to do is find little ways, little breaks, little resets in order to rebuild or conserve some of that battery. And that can look like a whole variety of ways to do that. So that's number one, is create safety, create more rest for yourself. Number two is what you said earlier, which is you said some people call this the messy middle. So that concept comes in part from Bridges' theory of change, which is a theory mostly around change and transformation in organizations. And there's three different stages. There's the beginning, there's the ending of the old, there's the messy middle, and then there's the new beginning. And so many times we want to rush to the new beginning. We want to know what is going to happen with AI, what is the future, but we're stuck, as you said, right now in this stage two, in this messy middle. And the messy middle is hard because it's defined by uncertainty, by lack of clarity of where we fit and where we belong, and an urgency that you feel to get to the next thing, to the new beginning. But, and here's what I want your listeners to take, it is also the place of the most creativity. So if you can learn to sit in the uncertainty, which is a psychological tool of being okay with uncomfortable emotions, none of us humans like to do. But when we can just sit and name it This is hard. It's uncertain. I'm not sure where I fit or where we're going. What that allows for is for us to create new and inventive, innovative things. And that is the gift of this opportunity right now, of this era we're in, is that we actually get to decide what we're creating. And if we could slow down enough to really look at it, we can say what we want that new beginning to look like. And so, what I would urge each person to do is to say, this is really uncomfortable, but I'm going to learn to sit with the discomfort of uncertainty. And from this place, really get creative and think about, how do I want to engage? What do I want to learn? What do I want to create? And move towards that versus letting the uncertainty and the anxiety kind of consume your thoughts.
Alexandra, I hope it's okay for me to ask this, but I'm actually curious. You've been studying the subject for a while now. So when it comes to stress, you are the person that I really, really wanted to talk to and bring on this podcast. Does knowing all of this actually make it easier for you to manage your own stress?
I mean, we all have stress, right? Because we're just human beings. Does it make it easier? Yes, probably. It probably does make it easier because I think that understanding the biology of it is really a gift. And that's why I get out here and I try to teach about stress and what's happening in your body to normalize it and to help people realize that it's okay to experience stress. Stress is just a signal to pay attention to. And when we can treat it that way versus something to avoid, what we can do is decide what we want to do with it. And we can decide how we want to grow from it and what the next step in our lives we want to take based on that stressful thing that happened. And so, yeah, I think having that framework does make it easier to manage stress. And I hope learning a little bit today that your listeners feel a little bit like they can handle stress a little bit better.
I'm sure that's exactly the case. Alexandra, thank you so much for doing this. You've been fantastic. And I hope we can do this again at some point in the future.
Awesome. I'm sure we have a lot to talk about. Thanks for inviting me, Matteo. Take care.